Oh, this is a guide for a blood DK. So this is my DK. So we might as well start off with talents. Talents can be very specific if you want to get the most out of your talents. I'll just go through ones that you're going to want to consider. My spec for this one is 100% tank PvE, so it should be accurate for this one. Blade Barrier, just less damage, good. They changed it in 4.2 or 3, so now you're just taking less damage, so always good as a tank. This one is just giving you extra attack power, so damage, threat. With your high amount of armor, it's a good threat. Plus Butchery, I have enough runic power, so I decided to go with Blade and Armor instead, just to unlock the next tier. Scent of Blood, I kind of just have 2 points because I ran out of points. I could have taken one from Blade Barrier and put it into here, but I still think I have a decent amount of runic power as I'm tanking, so I decided to put that in there. Scarlet Fever is it's a good talent because Blood Plague, which usually should be up when you're tanking, is just gonna reduce their damage dealt. Abomination's Might, again, just kind of threat, helpful to the raid, extra damage. They buffed that for melee attack power, so that's still good to have. Toughness, better armor is good. Bone Shield, especially now that it has 6 charges, you're going to take 20% less damage and do 2% more damage. You're going to move 15% faster only if you have the glyph. I find this very useful. Even though I forget it sometimes, it's definitely a great tool for tanking, especially when there's in-between phases on boss fights where I'm not really doing anything. I can use up an Unholy Rune just to get some extra mitigation for ahead. It's almost like an absorb. Improved Blood Presence, you're going to pretty much need to take this for the reduced chance to be crit. It's going to increase your rune generation, which is going to help for death striking, and yeah, that's good. Blood Parasites, damage is not amazing, but it's going to heal you and I think it heals your allies. Yeah, nearby allies, that's good. Sanguine Fortitude, or Sanguine, however you pronounce it. It's good. Your Icebound Fortitude you can pop whenever, no runic power, and it's gonna make you take less damage, so that's good. Rune Tap is just a great self-heal. Now, the reason I do have 1 point in this is basically what it's gonna do is when a damaging attack brings you below 30% of your max health, the cooldown of your Rune Tap ability is refreshed and your next Rune Tap has no cost. So that's all I'm gonna look at. Basically, the first point does that, the second point does that, but no different. The third point does that, but no different. The only thing that does increase is that you're going to take even less damage when this procs. So my thinking is that the first point is better than the second two, and if I get low, I can pop that regardless of how many points I have, and hopefully my healers can just keep me up from there with that quick heal. Now, it doesn't mean that the 2 points past that are useless, but I seem to think that it's just good enough with 1 point. Vampiric Blood is good for cooldown, for extra healing, especially when you're soloing. It's just extra healing, that's good. Crimson Scourge definitely helps with AoE tanking. Without it, I find that Blood Boil doesn't do much damage, and it's harder to hold threat on a big group of mobs. And the proc is nice too. Improved Death Strike is a given. You're like doubling the damage of Death Strike. It's getting really higher crit chance and getting a lot more healing, so that's very useful. Dancing Rune Weapon is good now because it's going to give you 20% parry, and with one of the set bonuses, when it ends, you're going to get extra parry when it ends. Now speccing into the 2 other trees. Runic Power Mastery, like I said, I have enough runic power and I find I'm always going over 100, so that's just nice to have. Icy Reach, I kind of just use that to unlock Lichborn, because you can pop it, become undead, death coil yourself to heal. And obviously Nerves of Cold Steel, I'm using a 2-hander, so it's useless. Unholy Command, that's kind of just to help me death grip more often when I'm killing stuff. Epidemic, if you put 2 points in it, all your diseases are 29 seconds. And with the added bonus in 4.3, where the Veteran of the Third War passive for Blood reduces the cooldown of Outbreak by 30 seconds, the cooldown is 30 seconds, so you'll only have 1 second between outbreaks where the target doesn't have diseases. So that is very useful. So these are great talents. There's a few things you could change, like maybe you could spec out of Lichborn and Runic Power Mastery and put it like Virulence to increase your damage of diseases, or just go and do Morbidity for the extra death and decay damage for AoE tanking. But I find this spec works good for me. As far as stats go, your #1 priority is Mastery, because it's going to make your Death Strike give you shields. You're going to go from being low health, for the more damage you take, Death Strike's going to heal you more, you're going to absorb more. So Death Knights are very take big hit, come back, as opposed to the other tanks, which are more even. Death Knights are more up and down with their health pools. Past Mastery is Dodge and Parry. I don't find Stamina to be greatly helpful, but it definitely does help. So Dodge and Parry you want to have about even, with Parry just slightly higher. Those are equal below Mastery. Then would go Stamina. Then would go Hit or Expertise. I find you don't really need those very much. Rune for your weapon. Rune of the Stoneskin Gargoyle is good, because it's going to give you extra armor and stamina. I find that when I use the Sword Shattering, the one that gives you parry, my parry is always way higher than my dodge, and it's very uneven, and then I put too much dodge in to even it out, not enough mastery, and it just kind of gets out of balance. So for the rotation of a Blood Death Knight, you're always going to want to have Horn of Winter up if you can. If there's a warrior or another Death Knight using Battle Shout or Horn of Winter, it's, I guess, not necessary, but it does give you runic power and can help. Before the fight, or like I said, in between phases, you're going to want to have Bone Shield up for some extra mitigation and a little extra threat. And if you have the glyph, the speed. And I'll talk about glyphs after. So what I like to do is, if I'm here, and if it's a boss, like you can't Death Grip them, I taunt them, run up to them, hit Outbreak, and yes, I do click a little bit on this character, and then kind of 2 Death Strikes, a Heart Strike, a Rune Strike, and then those are your 3 main things: Heart Strike, Death Strike, Rune Strike, Heart Strike, Death Strike, Rune Strike. And I do have like these things keybound that I can, and I have like T on Heart Strike as well, my T key. And now you're just going to go through, and then when your diseases wear off, or mainly just when your outbreak comes back on cooldown, you're going to hit your outbreak again to keep your diseases on the target. I don't know why my, what's it called, the Crimson Scourge isn't proccing, but when that does, you're going to hit Blood Boil, because it's a free rune. Like now, there you go. So say there's an in-between phase, like just off the top of my head, Nefarian, when you're going up on the pillars, and there's kind of nothing for a couple seconds. You're not taking much damage anyway, but you can just pop your Bone Shield and then do whatever you need to do. For AoE tanking, I like to drop my Death and Decay, Outbreak, Pestilence, and then use my Blood Boil as many times as I can, and then start Death Gripping for the necessary Absorb and heal, obviously. And that's mainly it. I do often, if I'm finding I'm really good on threat, I'll pop Rune Tap instead of a Heart Strike, just to help out. If I'm at max health, obviously that's not going to help. For cooldowns, for quick healing, I have this macro which casts Lichborn, targets myself, then casts Death Coil. So that's a good quick heal, and then I'll pop Death Coil a couple more times if I can. I also like to, just for quick healing, I'll go Vampiric Blood, Rune Tap, Draenei only. I have Gift of the Naru, which I'll cast on myself, and then I'll do a couple Death Strikes to get some extra heals, and that brings me, it can bring me from almost dead to almost max health. And just like I said, make sure to keep your Horn of Winter up. Death Knights do have a lot of cooldowns, You have Anti-Magic Shell, which is only on a 45-second cooldown. It does only last 5 seconds unglyphed, so you do want to time that pretty good, because it can get you a lot of absorb, as well as prevent nasty dots from going on. Empower Rune Weapon has a 5-minute cooldown, but it's going to get all your runes back in 25 runic power. That's good because you can Death Strike a lot or Rune Strike a lot, or I guess if you really want to, but it's not as good. Heart Strike. Icebound Fortitude, Talented, is going to make you take half less damage, and it's not going to cost anything. So that's good. Army of the Dead is a dangerous one because, like, in fights where they taunt stuff, it annoys them. Some fights it's okay, just pop it before and run in. Sometimes, if it's not an important fight, or if I'm DPSing, I'll do it while I'm, like, taking damage or something, because you take less damage, equal to your dodge and parry chance. Raise Dead, it doesn't help tanking, but you can use Death Pact to sacrifice it if you need to, and if not, just extra damage. Dancing Rune Weapon, I mentioned that in the talent section, 20% parry. Any trinkets, the one trinket I have, the Brawler's Trophy, these are both from Brewfest. This one's decent, helps your dodge, but like this one kind of sucks, the use on this one. But, might as well. That's pretty much it, but that is a decent amount of cooldowns. I'll just quickly look at glyphs. I like to use Death and Decay because it increases the duration of it, and it's very helpful for AoE tanking, just for initial threat. Past that, I don't always use Death and Decay all the time. A Glyph of Death Strike is going to increase the damage, just more threat. Heart Strike, damage of Heart Strike, just more threat. None of these are really going to help with actual tanking, like healing or defensive. The major ones aren't that crucial, but they are more so than some other ones. Like Blood Boil increases the radius, that's just helpful. Bone Shield, you can move faster, helpful. Dancing Rune Weapon, extra threat, that's good. You could get Death Grip, but you know, whatever. And minor glyphs are never important. I think that's most of the basics for Blood DK tanking. Flask of Steelskin, if you want to use a flask. I just happen to have the alchemy passive, or not passive, but the alchemy only flask. That's a little bit weaker than a regular flask. And taunting, your Dark Command, pop that if you can during a fight, just if there's nothing much going on. You can even macro it into something if you want, because it can proc bloodworms, trinkets if they have a proc effect, and just in case you're getting lazy, it'll make sure the target's sticking to you unless they're immune to taunt. As far as I know, this has been everything I need to cover. If I missed something, said something wrong, any suggestion, whatever, feel free to leave a comment. And yeah, thanks for watching.